Please be advised, we are not mental health professionals. Any information shared in this podcast is from our own personal experiences and should not be seen or taken as any form of medical or professional advice.
We are talking about different TikToks today. We have a doozy that has really impacted us, and we wanted to share that with you. Welcome to the journey that we're all taking together, and we can get started with that TikTok if you want, and we're just going to talk about it because some of these are just so important, and I really appreciate that other people are part of this community too, and we can really just talk about the issues that we're having and how to deal with them. So let's get on to the video. So this video is from Dewdrops, and we're gonna see what they have to say.
So I've named my mind Deborah. It was recommended to me in my intensive therapy classes to name my thinking mind a silly name and talk to it as if it's an assistant and it's providing too much assistance. And honestly, somebody that has obsessive compulsive disorder and anxiety disorder, it's kind of working. Deborah will tell me all these things and I'll say, Deborah, thank you. Honestly, I don't need it right now. It's really not helping the way that you want it to help. And it's really just been helping a lot. I still suffer a lot from a lot of things, but Deborah's like still there. But she's Deborah now. She's not me. I am not my thoughts.
Okay, so Deborah. I feel like my inner thoughts are honestly trying to help me because we were in that fight, flight, freeze, fawn, that survival mode, and that self-talk and we were talking about this last episode. It is trying to help us cope with being around the toxicity that we grew up with, but she wants to help so bad. Deborah, she wants to help because that's what we used to survive growing up.
Yeah.
But she's a little much sometimes.
Oh, very much.
She's sometimes not needed.
Can I just say this has nothing to do with Deborah, but it does have to do with what's the user's name?
Dewdrops.
I love your glasses.
Yes.
I will have to wear my glasses on one. I love when people use their eyewear as accessories. I love it so much as part of I love it. So I'm gonna have to wear mine. So I love those glasses. But yeah, Deborah wants to help. But I love that little trick though. It's like, why not? Because it helps for me when I saw that, when you shared that with me and I tried it. I don't know about you. You'll have to speak for your own experience. But for me, I'm like, oh, it really does help almost draw that line in the sand where it's like, oh, that's a different person. And then you can like evaluate and resolve and do all of the things a little differently.
Wait, and you can have that conversation with Deborah and just be like, I know you're trying to help. I know. Thank you so much for being there for me. But now we are not going to that is not necessary right now. So let's just dial it back. Thank you for your service.
Yeah.
It's not needed at this time.
Yeah. We're not selling tickets to this show, but maybe the next feature you'll be invited. Like, we've got this one. Yeah.
And I feel like, because you mentioned you vacuumed over your vacuum cord.
Yeah.
Your Deborah was just blah, 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 blah. Your Deborah was not being nice.
My Deborah was being a Deborah.
And, like, that happens to me. I spilled my coffee the other day, and I was like, how could you do... You're so stupid. Deborah, it's fine. We'll clean it up.
Yeah.
Thank you for, thank you, but no, not today. And Deborah can be really helpful. Deborah actually is usually very insightful, and but sometimes she has the voice of my parents.
Yes.
And
Deborah
it's not a
holds
kind
keys.
voice.
No. It's almost like what is it? What is the movie Matilda?
I love
the
that movie.
teacher. I love it so much. What is her name? Miss
Trumpkins. No.
Trumbull. Is it Trumbull? Mrs. Trumbull or Miss Trumbull?
Trunchbull.
Trunchbull. Yeah, sometimes Deborah is a Trunchbull. For real. Trying to get you to eat all that chocolate cake.
And stuff you into a Iron Maiden closet.
Right, and fling you around a room. Yes. But so, yeah, sometimes it's just not nice.
Mm-hmm.
Because Deborah knows all of your history. Deborah knows all of your little secrets. Deborah knows every word you've ever heard and said and done and did. Helps me differentiate. Like, I try now to talk to myself how I talk to children. For example, I had my friend's nephew over here. He's been having, some attitude stuff. So he came over to help me clean, just do some, work. Now, of course I helped him. Of course, he's younger. So his attention is a little more all over the place in general, because he's a child. And we emptied the dishwasher, loaded the dishwasher, it took us about an hour to empty the dishwasher and load the dishwasher and all the things. But I just sat there and I just talked to him. Nope. When he loaded it, I said, that's great. If it fits there, that's a great spot for it. Good job. I didn't just leave him to figure it out and then come back and criticize and demean him for all of the mistakes he made because he is a child and I did not give corrective adult direction. Instead, I chose to sit with a child who has not done something like that on a day-to-day basis to teach him. And then when he was finished, I didn't criticize that he put things in the top shelf instead of the lower shelf. I went to him and I said, you did great job, buddy. All right, I'm just going to move a few things around. You did a great job. I wasn't like, you should have put this here and that here while fixing it and critiquing him.
Right.
It's just that good job. Did he want to, help clean up dog poop? No, he did not want to help clean up dog poop. Did he want to clean the litter box? No. Did it take 10 minutes? Yes. Did I sit there and encourage him and watch him for that 10 minutes? 100%. But I'm not sitting there demeaning him and, whatever. So that's what my Deborah is now. It's like when I start screaming at myself like a Trunchbull, then I have to stop. And what is the teacher's name? What's the teacher's name?
Oh, the nice teacher?
Yes. The blonde hair. I can't even think of her.
Miss Honey.
Yeah, we need to be more like Miss Honey.
Miss Honey.
I
would like to share something that I have not really shared with much of anybody, but it has stuck with me. So growing up and learning how to do chores, because you were talking about how you were encouraging and teaching along the way instead of like coming back and criticizing.
Yeah.
So growing up, I had a lot of chores, and I think I mentioned before that I raised the two youngest siblings for the first couple of years of their lives, and I was homeschooled, so I was trying to do homework and, be a kid. But and I'm not saying having chores is bad for kids, but I do know that the way that I was taught to do chores was not very kind, and that's sort of the Deborah in my head talks to me the same way that my dad would leave a tiny piece of paper in the corner of the room because I would vacuum. Like I was in charge of vacuuming and doing the dishes and just basically keeping the house clean. He would leave a tiny piece of paper in the corner of the room, and when he would come home from work, if that tiny piece of paper was still there, I obviously did not do a good enough job, and I would have to do it again because that piece of paper didn't get sucked up by the vacuum. And it was like a trap. It felt like a trap.
It's manipulation, and it's so many things. Go ahead.
Um, I can see you seething. It's okay. I do the same thing when you tell me about stuff that your parents did. But yeah, so I would get in trouble and would have to redo it, or would get, hit if we didn't do it completely correctly and got all the corners and got everything with the vacuum. And so that self-talk does come from my parents in a lot of ways. My Deborah is sort of, and I stopped trusting myself for a long time because all I would hear in my head was that Deborah, and it didn't feel like me. It didn't feel like my voice, because it really wasn't. It was that criticism, that self-talk, that negativity, and like, oh, you're so lazy, you didn't even get in this corner of the room. Like, it's all the negative talk instead of the positive, like, hey, we'll do it better next time, or, if we do it this way, we will actually be better able to, complete whatever task I'm doing. And so my Deborah often leaves little pieces of paper everywhere, and if I don't check all the boxes, that negative self-talk comes back in. And Deborah is not very nice. Or she wasn't for a very long time. Until I started... Until I tried... It's bad. It was for a very long time. And
is it fair to say, because I can say this for me, when we talk about that criticism and that self-talk, what is very important is to understand and to like click in your brain is the words that you're using are the words that are coming from your parent as an adult, but the voice you're hearing is your own. So it's literally your voice saying some of the worst, most demeaning, negative things that are being told to you by your own personal inner voice self-talk, which is wiring your brain faster because it's our voice telling ourselves with the wrong language. So my parents were both military children, so my mom very much, she was, and I do this, I really do appreciate it. She was a very much, you pull everything out, you wipe it down, and you put it back, you wipe under things, you take things down. However, we had a dishwasher for a very short period of time. And then, because we had a very small kitchen, so small that when I went back there a few years ago to help them pack, like, because we were selling it, because they were moving, I walked in and I think one of the first things I said was, is the kitchen really this small? Because, as a child, you're like, oh, this is big.
It's huge.
It's so tiny.
Because you're a tiny person.
And so we ended up hand washing dishes. If we didn't do it correctly, she would threaten, if you don't do it correctly, I will take every dish out of the cabinet and you will hand wash every dish. Some people will be like, well, that's abusive. No, I mean, it did teach us. I don't think that is extreme or anything like that. I appreciate being taught to, where my dad was very much more of a shove it in a bag or put it behind a closet, like, let's just shove it later, which is why I think I have a huge, like, when I tell people, like, I'm stressed when there's stuff. I'm not like Danny Tanner OCD, but I definitely like organization, but I can have a little bit of disorganization now. But I used to be like you with your paper. Mine were like, I couldn't even let people over to my house. I didn't even invite people over to my own home because I thought they were going to criticize, like, if my sugar wasn't facing correctly. I literally would go into the bathroom, to the tub, look in the tub, and make sure my shampoo and conditioner bottles were facing and even and all organized, and make sure that, like, my soaps and things were organized, so that if anyone would go, I mean, that's the invasion of privacy. That is that, that PTSD, that emotional of, why should a child or even someone at 19 years old living on their own, that should not be something I'm stressing about. I can't invite people over. I can't have people over because I was always told, my dad would always say, he would use my friends. what do you think Chrissy would say if she came over? What do you think so-and-so would say? What do you think Wendy would say? What do you think Judy would say? You know,
instead of being like,
say?
This would look really nice if you would, you know, do it this way, and like, you know, flip it instead of the negative, just bring out the positive.
There's not that assistance. My dad was not one to assist. My mom did do a good job of like showing, but my dad was not one to assist. It was very much like, do it. This is how you do it. My dad is an amazing cook. He is a phenomenal cook. But like, to ask him for a recipe, you could get berated, or eventually he'll get tired of it and he'll be like, I'll make it with you. He won't give you the recipe, but he'll make it with you. And then you'll ask him for the recipe and he'll be like, well, we just made it. You didn't write it down. You know, it's just the silly stuff. Like, well, that's I think the thing.
that like those are like, you know, little breadcrumbs that sort of show the entire thing, because we know that we grew up with that sort of constantly. And I can't diagnose anybody, but that does, it elicits like a fear response, obsessive compulsivity. If that, you know what I mean?
No, that's exactly what it is. And that's part of that CPTSD. It kept me single. It kept me isolated, because my Deborah was always, I mean, it was 24/7 criticism, Kat. I'd go into the bathroom, be like, do I look, well, I guess I look disgusting. Like, I would go from step 1 to step 2. And I literally didn't even think I was lovable until I lost a specific weight, because my Deborah was always, you're not pretty enough. You're not good enough. You're not this enough. And it wasn't because of like the internet. I mean, yes, we had magazines and things like that, but the reality, it came from home environment.
Right. So, and I didn't grow up with social media, so I wasn't like on Instagram like, oh, I'm so ugly. It literally came from my parents telling me, you are this and this. You're not good enough. You're too big. You are, you know, and it's all the negative.
Yes.
Instead of the positive.
Instead of being like, oh my gosh, Kat, you're so creative. Look what you did. Like, I used to draw all the time. I'd have pictures on the walls, things like that. But it's just, that's that Deborah voice. Like, you have your Deborahs are little pieces of paper. Mine are like as big, as small, like as trivial as shampoo bottles sometimes. Right. It's like, I can't invite anyone over because everything has to be perfect.
And don't get me wrong, my parents did encourage me on a lot of stuff. Like, I also was, you know, I love to draw, and they wanted to, you know, facilitate that. I love music, so like I picked up guitar and cello and all that other stuff. But it was the constant negativity with a couple of positives.
Yeah, that love bombing.
Yeah, well, yeah. So my Deborah was just the negative, though. Like, she did not learn to be the positive one and be like, you did such a good job with this. She never said that. My Deborah, I would have to be like, I don't know, I guess this is okay. Like, I'll do a painting and be like, I can see all the places that I messed up and just be like, ugh, I don't like it. But someone looking at it will be like, that's so neat. And I'll be like, oh, okay. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's my Deborah.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like that toothpaste on the shirt. So there's two different people, right? You go to a function and someone says, you've got toothpaste on your shirt. Okay. Well, there's like 3 different people. And you're like, oh my gosh, I got toothpaste on my shirt. Thank you so much. Wipe it down. You know, well, there's 1 or 2 people. There's actually 2 people. There's the person who just wipes it down like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Oh, okay, I think I got it. And then they move on. The Deborah person is, you've got toothpaste on your shirt. Oh my gosh. Oh, gosh, I knew I shouldn't have gotten dressed. I knew I shouldn't have put my shirt on before I brushed my teeth. Oh my, you're saying all of this either out loud or internally. Your Deborah is, right? And then you're walking around the party like, hi, how's it going? I know. I got toothpaste on my shirt. Don't worry. You are pointing out the flaws because that's what's pointed out to you, right? So we want to change that Deborah to that, like, hey, oh my gosh, of course, you know, I got toothpaste. We want to be that healthy, that understanding, like, accidents happen, you know? It's like the other day. Remember, I mentioned I went in, I started early because I go in and I clean, you know, I do a deep clean every day because for my job, because of what I do. And 5 minutes, like, no, not even 5 minutes, like 5 seconds before my first client walks in, I literally take something out and I spill oil all over me. Remember I sent you a picture? I was like,
Yes.
well, sometimes. And that same day, I forgot that I didn't schedule a lunch, so I sent a picture of me eating 2 bites of like my yogurt outside, being like, and sometimes lunch looks like getting a bite in before clients. You know, figures, ha ha ha. And then something else happened and something else happened. And I'm so grateful to be at a point now where I'm like, sounds about right.
Well, that's
right.
today.
Yeah. Mind you, this morning when I was, the first 2 minutes of my conversation with you is, I hate everybody. I don't like anybody. I'm so blah, blah, blah. And it ended with me, I'm sorry, I was in a bad mood. I was just really all prepared and it went south,
Well, and that's the thing too, is Deborah's always waiting for the shoe to drop, and she's always like waiting for something negative to happen so that she can comment on it or say something. And
yeah.
I just have to remember that she's trying her best to keep us safe, but we are no longer in those situations where we need her.
Right.
In that way. We still need her. But
Yeah.
Deborah, I don't need you the same way as an assistant when I was growing up in a toxic environment as I do now when I'm trying to heal. And I'm not as, I'm not in that fight, flight, or freeze mode.
Or fawn, yeah.
Or fawn. I don't need that assistance anymore in that same way.
We need Deborah more as I'd say Deborah more as a navigator than an advisor.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's navigate through life. Like, hey, there's a car coming. Hey, there's an animal across the road. I almost hit a buzzard yesterday, deciding to just run across the road.
Make better
I don't
choices.
think it was a buzzard. It was like one of those turkey things that was running, and I slowed down. And you know what I do whenever I see an animal? I yelled it as loud as I could. Make good choices!
Make better choices! Make good choices!
I stopped by a squirrel the other day. He was in a hole, and it was a small, narrow road. This is totally nothing to do with anything. And his little tail was popped up, because squirrels are so cute. And I slowed down, and I yelled out my window. I'm like, you need to make better choices. Because he would have gotten hit. But anyway, it's just, we need Deborah. I want Deborah to navigate, not advise. I'm now at a place where I can advise myself on a healthier level, and recognize. I also think of Roz, from Monsters Inc.
Mike Wazowski.
Don't tell me you didn't forget to do your paperwork today.
That's a good point. She is a very good Deborah.
Roz,
yeah.
She's a great Deborah.
I feel like that.
Mike Wazowski.
I feel like that is exactly how my Deborah looks and acts. You are absolutely right. Because she's so negative.
And she's even got the glasses with...
Yep.
Oh, love it. But yeah, it's just kind of like, it's a yucky griff, it makes you feel how it sounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now, just like what I said with the vacuum thing, I unplugged it right away. I decided to call myself a lot of different negative things, and I literally just dropped everything, and I stopped for a second, and I'm like, no, turned and looked straight in the mirror, because I look myself in the eyes, because that's what, we look at adults when we're learning. That's how we take in information. And I want to put the right information in my brain, so I do preface, I think it's very healthy to look in the mirror and talk to yourself, because I did that so much growing up too, as well. But I did it on the negative. I did that with the Deborah voice, the Roz voice, or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
I would look in the mirror and be like, I'm so ugly. I'm so fat.
Right.
It teaches us, our Deborah voice teaches us to zoom in and focus on the flaws. You couldn't look at a picture without immediately zooming at yourself and then critiquing every little thing down to, oh, my shirt should have been lower, or my shoelace is untied. Who's gonna look at your shoelace? That's the reality, right? It's so trivially just stupid.
Where did we learn how to talk like that? Where did you learn?
Not
my mom.
Me.
My mom taught me to talk that way.
My parents.
Yeah.
My dad was always, what do you think someone's gonna look at that? Look at your shirt. Look how that looks.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about that appearance. And then it's, so that's why when we were, hanging out with people or when we were with family, like that's why that performance was so on point, because I was so afraid that the consequence was going to be, I mean, it could be anything.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't always have to be a physical reaction, because I mean, sometimes I told people, I said, I almost wish that it was more physical discipline. I know that sounds crazy, because if you only knew, but I even say, like, sometimes I wish it was more physical discipline, because at least those wounds heal. But the emotional and mental abuse and the emotional and mental trauma is worse. It is so much worse. And I think that the responses from the peanut galleries of, well, why didn't you say anything? I didn't know. And that can be for a multitude of situations, from
Mm-hmm.
any, from very, any kind of domestic dispute, cultist, just any type of unhealthy, toxic environment. It's usually fueled by a person saying, I wish I would have known. But it engages and goes back to, like, what we were just talking about the last episode, the criticism and advice. You say you would do that, but what is your natural conversation style like? I would not go to my sister, I would not go to my father, I would not go to my mother with any type of dire need advice, because I'm going to get criticism.
Yeah, and like
I
last
really,
episode, if you
yes.
wouldn't take their advice, don't take their criticism.
Right. So that way I don't have that my Deborah's not getting fed with all of that, So if I want advice from somebody, now we do freely give advice nowadays to each and everybody, because, like I've said before, we've mentioned it before on the podcast, I truly feel we're at an impasse, like, where we like to talk about each other. We don't talk to each other. We talk about each other.
Right.
And so I feel like the people who are saying, I wish I would have known, those are the people who always have something critical or critiquing, or you tell them they're not trustworthy. They're not trustworthy
Mm-hmm.
people. There's that fear. You create that environment, and there's that fear. Why do I want to tell you this? Like, why do I want to say this to you when I know that the response is going to be nothing but telling me every mistake and every choice and every decision I did that was wrong, with maybe a couple good things in there, but you're really going to hone in on the bad thing. So your Deborah learns to hone in on the bad stuff.
Deborah definitely, yeah. So a lot of the time, and I've mentioned this before, is that my negative self-talk, this Deborah, often has my parents' voice. Like, I will hear it in there, and I'm not talking like I will physically hear it. It's not,
Right.
But that negative self-talk will be in the same cadence and, like, the same way that my parents would talk to me. Yes. And you're hearing it as your internal monologue. You're hearing it as your voice. And it sounds right, because it's you. But honestly, you don't automatically have that as a kid. That's something you learn. That's something that is instilled in you, those little pieces of paper. That is something given to you by someone else who hadn't had their own trauma healed. Like, they weren't ready to have a kid, I don't think. My parents, I don't think, were ready to have kids. But who
Very
is?
cultural.
Who is ready to have kids? But
we will say, like, there is a lot of very cultural. Like, the culture was, like, my parents, they married young, younger. I mean, it was just normal marrying your 20s and stuff. That was the culture. That's the norm. Whereas more these days, it's like there's more single people. There's more, this and that.
People are having kids later and later. But I think some of that, too, has to do with they don't want to be like their parents.
Exactly.
And they would rather stop and take the time to heal before they even consider having children of their own, which I think is a very responsible thing to do. But also, like, we're growing up in a culture where we talk, like, the internet is forever, and we are like, literally us talking, like, we're going to be able to look back and say, I remember having that feeling. But I don't know. I just feel like if my parents have that unhealed trauma, they're just going to pass it down to us, and that's what they did.
Yeah, I was able, a lot of that led to the forgiveness part of it. From my healing heart was just understanding, like, my parents were emotionally immature. They didn't have that environment where emotions were cultivated, and that and emotional immaturity breeds emotional immaturity. You hit the nail on the head. It's like, I would love to have kids. I've always wanted kids. I've always wanted to be a mother. I've always wanted to love, and I've always been involved with, like, kids at church. I mean, I would babysit. I took a babysitting class, I think in 5th grade, but I desperately, I've always wanted that. I've always wanted kids, but I stayed single and I didn't realize this. It took a lot of work to realize I stayed single because I hated myself. I truly, because of the critical talk, because of the building up of the Deborah voice and not of the person, they didn't build me up. They built up that inner talk. And because of that, I truly didn't think I was pretty. I truly didn't think, I mean, this, you've known me for 15, 16 years. You know that this is a constant struggle. I truly, to my core, I didn't feel good enough. I didn't feel pretty enough. I didn't feel thin enough. I did not think that I was lovable because I didn't hear it. I didn't hear the good things. I didn't hear the, I remember I went to my cousin's wedding and one of my other cousins came up. I love her so much. And she looked up and she came up to me and she had told me before, she's like, Jenny, you look so good. My family calls me Jenny. I love it. And I said, good. Well, she came up to me separately again and she goes, I just want to tell you, I think this is the happiest I've seen you. Like, you look so good. You just look so happy. I don't think I've ever seen you like this before. And she only lives a couple hours away. So I have reached out to her actually recently and we're going to hopefully get together soon. Yeah. But people do notice the change when we change our Deborahs to silence our Deborahs and change it to our voice talk to immediately. And that is a key for me. Immediately. Don't we put ourselves last on the list? I had a list. I had chores to do. I had to get this done. I did not learn how to study properly. My homework was last. I would do my homework in study hall. I'd sit in the hallway and do it because it was more important for me to get the chores done because there were consequences than dealing with my schoolwork.
Right. And same. I would do all the chores. I would take care of the babies and I would do everything else and then try to work on my schoolwork. And it would obviously be, and then take care of myself, and then shower maybe. Exactly. Because I didn't care about myself. I put everybody else first because that's what I was taught to do.
Yeah. And I think that Deborah voice, for me, I have experienced since removing and taking those steps, as terrifying as it was. I remember my friend, I called her. I will not forget this. When I very, very first, was the first couple weeks of just diving into that whole narcissistic, mind meld and the matrix of it all. And I remember calling her and I picked up the phone and she goes, hey, how's it going? My exact words were not, hey, it was, hi, I wanted to call my dad, so I called you instead. And she goes, okay, what do you want to talk about? I said, I don't know. I would always call him and I'd always call my sister. It was always, and then I just making those steps. And then as you start taking those steps, as terrifying and scary as it is and uncomfortable as it is, the responses and the relationship and how they've changed with people. I never knew that relationships could be like this. It's so freeing. So when we change that inner voice to be like, you know what? Deborah's going to be on vacation. I'm on vacation, so Deborah's taking a vacation. Deborah can stay home.
She's not fired.
No.
Because we do need her.
She's going to take a sabbatical. Deborah's on sabbatical. We're good.
And you were talking about that physical change where once you're able to start that scary step of putting yourself first.
For the first time.
And not, you feel like you're a selfish bee for doing it, but then you're able to actually, your body responds and you look happier. Because you look completely different from how you did years and years ago. it literally has a physical change in us, and like how we, even our posture, like we are able to better face the world after healing some of that trauma.
Yeah. I will share this because you were witness when I went to go visit with some family when I was up for Thanksgiving.
Right.
And I, for the first time, Kat was sitting there on the couch for the first time ever. I looked at her and I did cry a little bit. I'm like, I can't explain it. I look pretty. Like I feel pretty. Like it was such a deep thing. Like, and you've always been like, you're so pretty, you are pretty, or this or that.
It's different hearing it from someone else than hearing it from yourself.
Yeah, because growing up, it was a reverse. It was a woe is me. It was a victimhood mindset of,
right.
I know I'm so fat, I'm so ugly, because we needed that encouragement. We were looking, and it was all negative encouragement because we had to negatively ask for it, right? People be like, you're not fat. Listen, I'm not skinny. I'm not necessarily, my breath's not that great when I run 10 steps. Like, I'm not I know I'm not healthy to the best of my ability. It's just, and your friends, they're being sweet. But that's the thing. True friends, they don't look at your outer appearance. And that's my mindset would go like, liar, because I didn't understand. You're not, as a friend, looking at my body type and being like, oh, that's my fat friend, or that's my ugly friend. You're looking at me as, that's my friend Jen. Yeah. Oh my gosh, she's so funny. This is what she does. And, oh, you need to ask her this. And I'll be like, that's my friend Kat. You would with another person that I try, I'm like, oh, she does this and you do this, and you I think you guys might enjoy becoming friends, not pushing it on you, because I'm not looking at, oh, that's Kat, she's my friend that has the nose piercing.
I mean, I am, but
right, but I do too, and I mean, it's just it's so funny. Like, even that's a perfect example. Even with the nose ring, I'm like, I got it for medical reasons, but everyone wants to just go ahead and make that judgment. And that's fine. I'm so glad to not live in a world where my Deborah rules it. Like in torture, it's a method of torture where they play loud music. You can't sleep. It's sleep deprivation.
Oh,
it's noise.
Yeah.
So I like to equate it to, that's the Deborah voice growing up. Like all that tying back into that critical talk, and that, why would you take that criticism?
Because she's constant.
Why would you take their advice? Yes.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so toxic to us, because we're sitting isolated in a room. I was very isolated, like I've mentioned before, and I mean, we played outside and things like that. But yeah, so it's just, I didn't love myself. I don't look at my friends. And what hurt my feelings, one of the things that I really that was a really tough area to forgive, was the fact that I had to come to the realization that my family will never see me as a human. They will only see me as I appear. And as long as I appear acceptable to them, it's okay. So I will keep it surface about body image and food and work.
Well, and the narcissist always reflects it back to themselves.
Yes.
Like, if you're fat, it's because I was a whatever parent, or my genes are inferior.
Fat, yeah, if I was fat, it's my fault, because I need to make better healthy choices. Sugar's bad, all the things are bad. But if I do the work to get out of my mental crap and my body starts healing from it, and I'm not depriving it anymore, and I'm nourishing it, and my body's actually responding and losing weight, when someone makes a comment to them, it will be, oh yeah, didn't she do such a great job? She's done yeah, she's been like, they know my whole life story when they know jack squat.
Right.
They want to take every accolade. They'll share your accolades, like, look how great my child is. But I literally even shared recently to thank my friends. I didn't thank my family. And I mean my immediate family. I thanked my friends for standing with me for the last few years. And I even said, it's been hopeless. It's been isolating. It has been I mean, it's been some of the darkest times of my life.
Mm-hmm.
But I am so grateful that I started on my healing journey when I did, because I don't know that I would have come out of that. That's how harmful it is. And it's so easy for someone who hasn't dealt with that, or a toxic person, or a self-righteous person, or someone who doesn't, want to care on the level of another person's emotion or human. They're going to say the off-cut Sunday school answers of, but their family, oh, you should be over it by now. I'll tell you what. How about I have you sit in a room, and for one whole year, all you're going to hear is everything you do wrong. Just 365 days. That's it. And you're going to hear how horrible you've done everything, how horrible of a person you are, how every decision there was something wrong with it.
Mm-hmm.
Unless it elevates me, then it was a good decision. I'm only going to do that for 365 days. Now imagine that for how many years?
Mm-hmm.
Don't tell me to just get over it. If you don't want to offer, then don't offer anything. Don't offer your opinion if you don't want to offer advice. And if you're not being asked for advice, you don't need to offer your criticism either.
But I feel like that just completely formed my Deborah to be that way, because that is the repetitiveness, that behavior that we heard, those things that they were telling us, we heard them constantly, and it's so easy for our Deborah to be exactly that same way.
Mm-hmm.
Because
yeah.
it comes so naturally.
Yeah, because I mean, you're a product of your environment.
Right.
You
Starts
go
in
to
the
a
home.
job, you get an employee handbook, and you're like, oh, okay, these are all the things you have to do. Your handbook of home is completely blank when you get it. It's like this. They dictate what it is, and you're following the handbook of home. But when you get out into the real world, you look like an idiot. You look like you're totally untethered. You're all dramatic. You're oversensitive. And then when you ask a question, because you're legit have no idea,
Mm-hmm.
but the parents don't want to be found out, they use it to excuse or demean you in front of them. Break it down. That's 365 days. How would you feel?
Mm-hmm.
You think of the person that everyone has that person. And I hope I'm not that person for you, Kat. That eventually when you're around that person, you're like, oh my gosh, you try and get away from them.
No, I don't feel that way about you at all.
I don't feel that way about you either.
Good.
But we're also very honest with each other. Like,
oh yeah, like I had a very doom and gloom day the other day, and I was just talking to you on the phone, just like, I am so sorry that I am just being a butthead, because I just did not feel good. But that's also just like life. Like, it does happen.
Yeah.
And we are very, very forgiving of each other and sympathetic and compassionate, because we understand the feeling. But people who didn't grow up with that kind of Deborah, I feel like it's maybe difficult for them to even comprehend. Like you were saying, the 365 days, that's just 1 year. That was like our whole childhood. So I just feel like it's harder to relate to people who have not gone through something like that. But once we find like our people, we like for you guys too, like we want to be able to be there for each other, because sometimes other people just don't get it. They don't get us.
Right.
They didn't go through that.
Right. We understand what happened to you was real. Mm-hmm. What you experienced, what you felt, those were real feelings. We get it. And we're here. We are so sorry that happened to you, because we have felt those feelings. Yeah. We have experienced it. We've gone through it. And you apologize, I don't know how many times.
I apologize for breathing. It's just how I grew up.
Yeah. And I turned around and I'm like, I'm sending you little like videos and things like that, because we understand in an environment, like in my environment, and if I was having a bad day, if I'm having a bad day on the phone, like on the phone or something, I'm talking to like my mom and I get a little snippy. It is very, that's not what okay, Jennifer, okay, well, I'm going to let you go, instead of, are you okay? Like,
yeah, like what's
how's
going
your
on?
day? Like, you sound a little off. So
Mm-hmm.
I told you, I'm like, Kat, I had that day too. Remember, da da da. And I sent you videos. You've been like, I'm just sending you a smile.
And
Because when we had those situations, well, for me, when I had those situations growing up, I was told to just leave the room and I had to go
mm-hmm.
self-soothe and self-regulate
Which you weren't
when I'm a
taught how to
child.
do in the first
Right.
point or
So
the first
my
part.
Deborah talk is all I hear because I am a child learning. And because all I have learned so far is Deborah talk,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sitting in a room. So I have a person that I know that if I'm having a bad day, like even this morning when I came on and I just straight up was a complete poo head to you for like 2 seconds, and you're like, no, it's fine, you know. And 9 times out of 10, we don't even notice the other person's doing it because we don't evaluate our friendship on our emotions.
No,
And
but we do need each other because you were telling me the other day, you were like, stop saying sorry. Stop saying
yeah,
sorry. And we
I'm like,
need
why are
people in
you
our
sorry?
lives. Yeah, we need people in our lives to be like, stop saying sorry.
Yeah, and I
It's
do that now
okay.
too. I have to make sure that I don't sound as attacking, but I'll stop people now because I'm like, it can sound attacking and it comes from such a great place, but it's such a passion. Like I want people to heal. So now I try to be like anyone. I'm like, what are you sorry for? Well, I did, and why do you need to apologize for that?
Hmm.
But why? Why are you taking responsibility for something that no one's given you the responsibility for?
That's
I
a good
held the
point.
responsibility of 4 or 5 different people on my plate for so long. Their happiness on my plate. I mean, even this morning, I apologized like 3 times for 10 seconds of being a poo, but I truly felt bad. I'm like, you didn't deserve it. But it's creating, and that's the community we're trying to cultivate. We want to
Right.
create the space to be like, you know what? If I pick up the phone and be like, you know what? Thanks a lot. And you'd be like, what? Nothing. I just needed to get it out. I'm not really, it's not you. It's having that safe person. Find a safe
Right.
friend. And I do want to preface, I was told this too, when you first learn about narcissism or toxicity, or you're getting out of an abusive environment, find 1 to 2 people. Be careful who you tell. Be careful. I thought I had very trustworthy friends. I thought I could
Mm-hmm.
share with a few different people. And it ended up just being super detrimental and killing my heart in some of those friendships
Mm-hmm.
because they made these judgments and attacks. And I'm not saying I was not, I was just at fault as well. And, but so just be careful for your own heart health and your mental health and your healing journey. Be careful who you talk to. I just recommend like write things down. Just write it down, get it out somehow.
And we're
If
not
you have
saying
to
don't
do
trust anybody because there
right,
are people
just
out there who will look out for your best interest, but you
yeah,
got to make sure because some people,
yeah.
they might seem genuine and they're really not.
And because I struggled with just blind trust, I just
Mm-hmm.
thought I could
I was
trust
very
everybody.
gullible.
I was so naive.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm like, I shouldn't be in my 30s and being this naive. Like, I'm a grown adult, but my mindset was still stuck in that cycle, that cycle of, okay, this, and every new experience was me on high alert, trying to
Mm-hmm.
figure out, okay, what is the right thing to do? Because it wasn't, that learning was not a healthy learning environment. It was figure it out or be punished. It can stem from many different things. So tell us, what about you
Mm-hmm.
guys? What kind of self-deprecating talks, like, were there statements that were over and over? What, name your Deborah. What do you name your Deborah? Do you name your inner voice? What's your inner voice's name? I don't know that I'll stick. Is it Deborah? Is it Roz? Is it,
Mike
what is it?
Wazowski.
Mike Wazowski. Oh, the feeling of freedom and the feeling you get from healing. Like, yes, we're talking about this, but we are talking from the other side of victimhood. And
Right.
to be less victim in your mind, I can say I'm entirely seeing the world as a whole. It's like
And it's a
being reborn
process too. It's
in a,
not like it's not overnight where things are different. We are continuing this process and we really need each other in those
yeah,
safe people. Please feel free to comment or email us at victimlesspodcast@gmail.com.
yes,
We love to hear from you guys and just to be able to be there for each other because honestly, we just need that sometimes, and not just sometimes, all the time. But Yeah, just let us know, because we really want to start cultivating that community that other people have already started. We just love being a part of it. Yeah.
Because what you went through was real. And sometimes just having one safe person or a safe space to feel validated and feel heard, and to be reminded and told you're not crazy, you're not alone, you were a victim, you're no longer a victim, you are a survivor. And we're here to encourage you, to support you. We are not licensed professionals, but we have been there, and we can share our emotions, we can share our journey, our experiences, to help all of us live a little victim less. We hope you have a wonderful week. And also, like us on TikTok and Instagram.
Yeah.
We're about to get those. We're going to get those rolling. We are looking to do like some little giveaways and things like that. So keep an eye on that. It's coming, not tomorrow, today or tomorrow. But we are loving this this journey of learning. I'm personally loving all of the things with the podcast, and I'm personally loving all of it. And we love having you with us. Thank you for listening. And we hope that you have the most wonderful week, and join us next time. If you have any videos or any little TikToks or anything that you've found helpful, shoot us an email.
Absolutely.
We would love to share those. We will even, we'll give you a shout out. Share some things, that have helped you. But yeah, so yeah, but have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.